Hello, my friend. It's Batman here. Just finishing up my weekend visiting with my good friends from long ago. The weather's turning kind of sour out there. We got thunder and lightning. Got about a 4-hour drive to go back to Des Moines. Learned some things. Learned my RV gets about 4 miles a gallon. That the GPS says is a 3-hour drive. It's more like a 4-hour drive with an RV, especially when you have to stop 3 or 4 times to gas up again. Makes me wonder how people travel the countryside in these things. This thing here is a beast. I'll grant you it's old, but I thought to get a little better mileage, like 7 or 8 a gallon, not 4, but it is what it is. As usual, my friend Shannon put on a good meet. His new girlfriend, potential fiance, went out of their way to make us feel comfortable. Brought in plenty of stuff and victuals, and probably a little bit more than they needed. We were expecting a couple other people to come. One showed. One had to work late, and the other one, I'm not sure, bugged off, which is good or bad, depending on how you look at it. Shannon was expecting to have a few more players at the table. We still ended up with 4 people, which is a pretty good group. Shannon's experience with running campaigns is not extensive, but not completely limited. This is his first time he's ran a Champions game in many years. He had some rocky parts when we started. He introduced the game when we were all sitting around the table just finishing lunch without us realizing we were actually beginning to play the game. He gave what we thought were a hypothetical event situation, which was his method of trying to segue into the campaign. It became confusing after about an hour, because then we start going from what could have been a local disaster kind of thing to a worldwide situation that needed addressed, and there was no groundwork set up. There was no pre-work. There was no really short but poignant backstory for the scenario. We were just average Joe public who suddenly discovered we had abilities. And of course, one fella in the group who is notorious for just running off on a tangent the first opportunity. His go-to for everything is to bust in and loot people's stuff, steal things, more or less become the first murder hobo trope he can arrange. And had we began or kept in the same route where we began, it would not have been necessary to stop and regroup and as a game group to exactly understand what it is we were trying to achieve and where we were going. So I had to, as gently as I'm capable of doing, point out to Shannon that while I applaud his opening gambit, that it would have been a little better if we all had a common ground, because now we got a couple of us over here trying to figure out what we're doing over here, a third guy over there busting into the local neighbors' houses. Meanwhile, he's going on about alien threats in Japan that are creating something or another that's turning half the world population into mutants, which is his version of the Champions. And this became very confusing very fast, and we rebooted and picked up where we left off in the local scene and had a progressively good afternoon from that point on. I did send him some information on a couple video blogs I've seen over the past 6 months on the topics of running a one-off campaign, because that's something that Shannon is not experienced with. His idea was he was going to run 5 or 6 scenarios in one afternoon, as if they were weekend. One, each couple hours long would be 4 or 5, the equivalent of a mini campaign with 4 or 5 weekends crammed into an afternoon. And I kind of pointed out to him that that's not going to work well, especially when it would spend most of our time bogged down in paperwork trying to make adjustments and advancements for our characters. I said it's better to just stick with what we have and play out the scenario that he has in his head, which was, another stumbling block because he didn't have the time. He was so busy worried about creating a conducive environment as a host that he didn't spend a whole lot of time putting down his plan on paper for himself. So he was kind of ad-libbing to some degree, which is something Shannon does not do too well. Now, I've noticed that over the years, and a few times I've played at his table, which is a personal quirk. So I enjoyed myself. His friends enjoyed themselves. Got to meet his potential fiance. He introduced him to my wife. This one here has been terribly, terribly affectionate the whole weekend. I don't know, I think the long trip up here got her off her kittles because she's been more or less like this every time we step back into the RV, which is, okay for her, I guess. A little bit here, we're about to set out on a return trip and spend another $130 in gas to get back to Des Moines and get back to the insane work schedule that's ahead of me for the rest of the week. Looking at 65 to 70 hours pretty much the whole week, with very short windows in between for things like sleep and a shower. May or may not work out the way the scheduler has got planned, but that's neither here nor there. The main part is that the first time in a long time the Fat Man's got together with some friends and had a game and was able to play, which made it even further because the last time I ran a game was probably 3 years ago, and it's been about 4, maybe a little more, since I actually got to sit down and play. So it was a good thing. It gave me some thoughts and food for thought, some reflections on my personal life, and some motivations to do some stuff that'll, make things a little more stable on my end of things. I definitely would like to get a stable situation set up so I can find a few new gaming friends and get back into the regular gaming things. I'm not sure he encourages us to move up here, but this isn't our home. And these are his friends, not really mine, which is nothing wrong with getting together with people you really don't know. That's kind of a big part of our hobby. I've done it for many times, many years, at conventions and at friends' houses with people I don't know. This is an example of that. The only problem I had in this particular case was that one person wanted to go off into this looting murder hobo rage, and the other one wanted to sit in the house we were sitting in verbally in the game and batten it down in some way to fortify it, because we weren't sure exactly what was going on. This black cloud filled the sky and rolled up the street and got into everything, and the one character, quote, NPC, appeared to die or went into a comatose state, and then his conscious reappeared in the cell phone, which I then also had to have a short conversation with my friend about the separation of the game master from the player. And Shannon is often had to play a lot of short games or games with just very few players, 1 or 2 players, and so he's developed this need to want to play as well as want a game master. And so he'll create a character that he plans to run, except the character's half there and half not there, half full of knowledge he shouldn't have, and sometimes giving advice he shouldn't give, or making and doing actions that potentially are counterintuitive to the rest of the players because he's not a player. And once again, I gently explained to him that, in my opinion, that is probably a bad idea. That a GM should be the GM. You have plenty of NPCs to run, plenty of the other people in your game world to handle, plenty of paperwork to deal with. Excuse me. Also, including yourself as a player is and can be problematic. Maybe not so for everybody, but some people don't handle it as well as they could. And I think in the case of Shannon, he overextended himself to a little degree at the beginning, which is why we stumbled all over everything a good hour into it when we started pulling the character sheets out and started talking about chartering the jets and flying to Japan and finding out where the alien menace is and blah, blah, blah. So we went from a completely understandable local disaster with a nut job a member of our party trashing the neighbor's house and getting chased by a lady with a flaming head, to trying to jet set our way across the world, such as the X-Men would do, with resources and stuff that we didn't suddenly appeared to have and that we didn't know we had or should have had. So it became a bit of a confusing thing that we paused to have to reboot, if you will, and restart it. From there it smoothed out and became a fairly enjoyable afternoon. The party broke up a little early. One fella had to drive back to Des Moines. The other, we got close to supper time, so, and after that, but it's just a quiet evening with friends, which is also a good thing. So, thank you for putting up with me, and hope to get back to my regular situation and stuff that we usually do. And until next time.